call first, and then we will go into the agenda items. Oscar, can you start the recording, please? Can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Development Control Committee, which is being convened as a hybrid meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practical following this meeting. Everyone participating in this meeting will be accessing this meeting from either the Council chamber or remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or on silent mode. Please make sure that you receive an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points for the record. The agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones on at that point. At all other times, attendees should keep their microphones off. Please could these members attending remotely keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting. If any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the right-hand side of the microphone team windows, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please lower your hands once you are finished speaking, and the chat button will be disabled for that meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of the microphones throughout the meeting, and when necessary will mute those not being used. In the event of any vote, the Democratic Services will be called for the names of members in question in order so they can cast their votes, and the legal officer then will tot up these and announce the result. I will also ask that officers to introduce themselves as and when they invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They should also ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use, please. I will now go to the following business. Apologies for absence. I've received one. Joanna Hopkins has sent me one. Apologies. Anybody else got any apologies for anybody else? Oh, sorry. Councillor Alan Watson, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Please accept my apologies. I'm going to have to leave the meeting at 11 for a doctor's appointment. Thank you.
Most important. Thank you very much for telling us. Mr. Councillor Keane? Mike?
Thank you, Chair. I have to leave about 12 o'clock and unfortunately have another appointment.
Okay. Can you both put your hands down once you finish, please? Thank you. Any declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. It's a query that I have on agenda item number 9, appeals.
Yeah.
One of the appellants that is going to be mentioned, I'm a ward member for Bridgend Central, and on ward walkabout, sort of aware and have knowledge of this. So I don't know if I need to seek advice from our legal officer or whether I can just sort of stay.
Use your mic. Use your mic.
Thank you, Councillor Easterbrook. You've declared your interest, but we've discussed you played no part in the enforcement or the appeal process. So because there's lack of involvement, you can stay for the noting of the report.
All right. Thank you for that advice.
All right. Nobody else declaring any interest? No, I can't see any names up. Okay. Number 3 on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the 11th of the 1st, 24. Could somebody move and second that, please? Thank you, Tony. Somebody second. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths, for that. There is no public speakers today. The amendment sheet, everybody seen the amendment sheet? Yeah, everybody's read it? Okay, thank you for that. Guidance is number 6, just to be noted. And if we go on to number 7, Rallant Place Booth Call. Steve, do you want to go through please?
Thank you, Chair. Just for the purpose of the recording, my name's Stephen Jenkins. I'm the Development Control Team Leader for the West of Bridgend. This application seeks planning permission for a single-storey garage at the side of 13 Reynolds Place in Porthcawl. Reynolds Place is a narrow private cul-de-sac within easy walking distance of the town centre. The property is a semi-detached dwelling with a side and small rear garden The garage will be positioned in line with the front elevation of the main dwelling as a pitched roof design and will be finished in a combination of matching brickwork, render and tiles to match the main dwelling, and will provide parking for one vehicle. In terms of statutory consultees, we haven't received any objections. The local authority's highways officer noted that parking was at a premium on Reynolds Place, and as such, an additional off-street parking space is welcomed. We've received 4 letters of objections from neighbouring properties, covering a wide range of topics. These have all been summarised and addressed within the officer's report. I think it should be noted that a lot of the objections stem from a previous application, which was from a single person's dwelling, which was P22319 full. Whilst that application was withdrawn, it has placed a doubt in residents' minds that this would be for a similar use or for an Airbnb. This is not the case, and this issue has been addressed in the report. This application is for a garage for parking of the applicant's private motor vehicle, and the condition has been imposed to ensure that that's what they will be used for. To conclude, on balance, we have, having regard to the objections that we've received, it's considered that the proposal represents an appropriate form of development that would have no unacceptable impacts on visual amenity, residential amenity, or highway and pedestrian safety. As such, the proposal is recommended for approval. If there's any questions, I would be happy to answer. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. You can see on page 24, the recommendation is to be granted. Can somebody formally move and second that, please? Thank you, Tony.
Move.
Oh,
Second.
thank you. Any questions now on regarding this for Steve? No? Okay, that's passed. Let's move on then. Thank you. Next one on the agenda is the Upper Ogmore Valley between Blaengwynfi, Nantymall, Blaengarw and Bridgend in Neath Talbot. It's the variation from PEDW regarding the turbines. Phil, do you want to go through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Phil Thomas. I'm a Development Control Team Leader for the Easter Bridgend. Members, by way of background, in September 2022, the Minister for Climate Change granted planning permission subject to conditions for a development comprising 7 wind turbines, 4 with a maximum tip height of 149.9 metres and 3 with a maximum tip height of 130 metres. There were other associated works, including a secondary consent for an exchange of common land. The applications were considered as developments of national significance and were developed and were determined not by this authority, but by PEDW, an appointed inspector, and the decision issued, as I said, by the Minister for Climate Change. The Upper Ogmore Wind Farm and Energy Storage Facility is going to be located on land to the south of the A4107 and situated between Blaenguinfi, Nantymall and Blaengarw. A small portion of the application boundary relating to the offsite access upgrades on a Natural Resources Wales forestry track is located in Neath Talbot. The location of the proposed development is illustrated in Figure 1 at the top of page 28 of your report. The application before you, members, seeks to amend the rotor diameter of the approved wind turbines from 105 to 117 metres. That's all the turbines, not 4 as indicated in the report, and I draw your attention to the amendment sheet. The overall tip height of the wind turbines will not be affected and shall remain as consented. So as submitted under Section 73 of the Planning Act, this seeks to vary Condition 2 of the DNS consent granted. The figure 3.2 within the report shows you the elevation drawings of the approved and proposed wind turbines. I think they're on the page 30 of your report. It's a quirk of the legislation that local planning authorities are asked to process these applications because the original consent was granted by Welsh Government, but that is before us. The report, members, details the history of the site, gives you a summary of the consultation responses received, and I draw your attention to the objection received from my State Town Council. It should be noted that no other objections have been received from any other statutory consultees. Over 350 letters notifying the residents of the Garrow and Ogmore Valley were sent out, and we received one letter of objection. And the summary of the comments received are reproduced on page 33 of your report. Many of the concerns raised by that resident align with the main considerations in the assessment of the application. The inspector appointed by PEDU to review the DNS set out the following principal matters for consideration in the determination of that application, and they form the basis for the review of this submission with reference to the specific changes proposed. If I just go through them as briefly as I can. The effect, firstly, of the proposed change to the wind turbine design on landscape character and visual amenity. Basically, in summary, on the basis that the turbine height would be maintained with only the diameter of the rotors changed, any impact on landscape character and visual amenity would be negligible, and in any event is accepted by the site's location being within one of the pre-assessed areas for wind energy. Impacts on landscape character are set aside on the basis of that location within a pre-assessed area by Welsh Government. Second point is the effect of the proposed change to the turbine design upon the living conditions of the occupiers of neighbouring residential properties, having particular regard to noise impact. I comment as follows. To accompany this application for the revised design, the applicant submitted a revised noise report that demonstrated that the predicted operational limit specified in the DNS consent can be met with the increased rotor blade. Colleagues in shared regulatory services have no objection to a larger rotor diameter, as the consented limits are not being varied. Once the choice of turbine has been finalised, any additional reports will need to demonstrate compliance with the levels specified in the tables A1 to A6 and B1 to B6, which are in the end of that report. As part of this variation application, it is imperative that all planning conditions listed in the previous consent are reproduced, and that is the case. Further point, the impact of the change upon ecology and biodiversity interests. Overall, when the inspector considered this in the wider scheme, he concluded that during the construction and operational phases, the ecological and ornithological effects would be localized and would not amount to unacceptable adverse impacts. And there's no reason not to draw the same conclusion with regard to this application, given the scale of the proposed change and the opportunity to impose the same conditions on this new consent. Effect of the changes on cultural heritage assets. Position of the turbines are unchanged, so the impacts are unchanged too. Highway safety, comment on that would be, as detailed in the report, the route for transporting the turbines will pass through the road networks principally outside this county borough, only exiting onto the A417 eastbound for approximately 1 kilometre to the proposed site access. Due to the increase in blade length, a swept path analysis of the critical turbine component delivery vehicles has been undertaken, and there are only very minor changes from the previous submission. Those works will take place on land within Neath Port Talbot. Therefore, subject to certain details being agreed and implemented through planning conditions, there would not be an unacceptable traffic or highway implications arising from the development. Members, in conclusion, the changes to the turbine design are deemed acceptable, and the recommendation is to approve, subject to the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement or providing a revised unilateral undertaking to secure the submission of a biodiversity enhancement management plan prior to the development commencing. This management plan would include a natural sediment management initiative and wider habitat creation works in the Upper Garrow Valley. The recommendation and conditions are on page 42 to 60 of your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. You can see the officer's recommendation on page 42. The recommendation is A and B with the amendment. Could somebody formally move that, please, and second it?
Second.
Thank you.
I move, yeah.
Thank you. Any questions from the officer regarding this, please? Oh, Simon?
Yeah, I'd just like the officers to reconfirm about the impact on potential noise levels of the larger turbines. I think that is covered in the report, but I'd just like to hear the officer's view on that, please.
Thank you. Phil?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, in fairness, I think I mentioned earlier, it was probably the issue actually that was considered at the hearing session in respect of the DNS project, and Helen Williams as Shared Regulatory Services presented quite substantial evidence to the inspector, because the issue of noise is significant, because not only of this wind farm, but there are other wind farms not too distant, Llynfiavan, Pantawal, and the cumulative impacts of these wind turbines in terms of noise. I think critically, the developers acknowledge that in terms of this submission and has reviewed noise and has demonstrated to us that the turbine design, by having the longer rotor diameter, is not going to cause a further issue in terms of noise. In fact, the levels that have been set in the conditions of the DNS consent will not be exceeded. I think it's important to note that there are lots of covers and catches within these conditions, in that there is a requirement to reassess. There's also a requirement that if we should ever receive a complaint regarding noise, there's a mechanism and a process for that being comprehensively reviewed, and therefore offers safeguards to us as an authority in terms of protecting the living conditions of the nearest residents. So I think importantly, in terms of this application, the changes made do not cause our colleagues in SRS a concern, and they are satisfied that if we reimpose the conditions the inspector did, that noise is going to be suitably mitigated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that answer. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair. For those of us that have been up near a wind turbine, they do create quite a lot of noise. And we keep mentioning properties. How close is the nearest property, Phil?
What a question. I don't know. I've got to be straight. I do not know that answer. I'd have to. You're talking. If anybody knows where the BT towers are, that is approximately where the turbine is. In terms of the nearest individual property, Councillor Clark, if I gave you an answer, it would be wrong, because I would be guessing that. I read through the inspector's report again yesterday. I don't even think he specifies the precise distance from one turbine to the nearest property. Are you in the range of a kilometre? Probably less than that, but it is a significant distance. We are at the top of the plateau, at the highest point of our valley system. You are some significant distance from communities in Ogmore Vale. You'll see them, don't get me wrong, you will see them. Mm-hmm. But in terms of actual physical distances to properties, you know, I'm not talking about 50, 100, we're talking, I would have thought 900 a kilometre away. I can look that up for you, and I can provide that information to you again. But I just want to be clear, I suppose, I haven't mentioned this, it's just to be mindful, this is a variation of a consent that's already been granted, where the inspector considered the implications of the turbines relative to properties and living conditions, and not changing the position of the turbines, it's just changing the design of the turbines. If we grant planning permission today, so be it, they may well install the turbines that we've granted. They will also have a planning permission in place already that they can install the original turbines. So I can provide that information to you now later, but if I gave you a figure now, I think I would be guessing, and I don't think that would be fair to the committee.
If I could come back, Chair, on that. That's fair enough, Phil. I do find that quite surprising when we're talking about noise and we're talking about properties, that perhaps nowhere in that report it mentions how close the nearest property is. And quite frankly, you telling me after this, you know, once it's been approved today, is a little bit pointless. But thank you for the offer.
Councillor Clark, Jonathan wants to come in and just make a comment on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Jonathan Parsons, the Group Manager for Planning and Development Services. You raise a very good point, Councillor, and I can, although it may not be specified in the report, and looking at the maps now, and the nearest settlement to this development is Nantymoel, that's within Bridgend, and also in Blaengarw in the other valley. There may be properties that are closer that are in other authorities and in East Port Talbot, but it's in excess of 1 kilometre to those settlements. There may be other isolated properties in between. I think it's also important to also consider that we are not actually making a determination on the principle of this development. That decision has already been taken. A planning inspector looked at these issues and issued a report, and that report was accepted by the Welsh ministers, and planning consent was granted. We weren't part of that, and we were a consultee. However, as Phil has pointed out early on in his presentation, it's a quirk of the legislation that although the development of national significance process is determined by Welsh ministers ultimately, whenever there's an amendment to it, or even an enforcement of any of the conditions, it falls to the local planning authority to do that. So the principle of development has been established. The issues of noise and the nearest receptors to any potential noise has been looked at extensively by the previous planning inspector. What we're looking at in this particular application is a change in design of the wind turbine. The heights of the turbines are not changing. It's the length of the blades. And what Phil has pointed out is that the range of conditions that we have attached to this decision is sufficient to control the noise emissions that would come from that particular development. I'm not aware that we have had any serious issues with noise from wind turbines in any of the schemes that are either in or within our boundary area or adjacent to our boundary area. But it is an important point, because we've got to look at this not just from the development itself, but also cumulatively, because you've got other neighbouring wind farms close to this site and within close proximity to this site. But the conditions will control the cumulative noise outputs from these wind farms. And if you look at the planning conditions, you see there are quite a lot of information attached to them, including tables and acceptable noise levels, showing acceptable noise levels. And in the event of a complaint, we can move swiftly to address that. But as I said, I'm not aware that we've ever had an issue with noise from any of these large-scale wind farms within our area. I hope that gives you some comfort, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan.
And Councillor Clark, I just looked very quickly, page 52, item 38, it says in there, condition, and on page 57, top of 57, table C, the dwellings, it gives you the addresses then of all the houses, some of the houses on that, which are irrelevant. Yeah, okay. Okay, so, no, oh, Simon, sorry, yes, Simon? You, on mute, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I was asking you to ask a question, but Jonathan's already answered them. I mean, it's great news that actually our planning controls are actually doing what they're supposed to do, and that we haven't had any complaints around noise around any of the existing wind turbines. And I think we've also covered the complaint process and how that would actually respond to any complaint about the noise. So I am so thank you, Office, for explaining that, and I think that actually puts my mind at rest for this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Are we all in favour of the officer's recommendation with the amendment?
Aye.
Yeah. Thank you for
Aye.
that. Okay, we go on to item, no, hang on. Yeah, item 9. It's the appeals now. Has anybody got any questions on appeals on item 9? I'm not going to go through them. You should have read them, and you can ask the appropriate officer then if you have got a problem. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. In the appeal relating to Mr. W. Totterdale, the description untidy land is used. And I just would like to increase my knowledge of what actually constitutes untidy land, if I may.
Thank you for that question. Jonathan will take that.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's. I seem to remember we did a training session on this, but it was many years ago, and perhaps there's something that we should put on the agenda to cover as part of our planning enforcement training. Yeah. Yes, untidy land. It's a little bit of a catch-all description. No, the appeal is in relation to the serving of a Section 215 notice. Now, a Section 215 notice under the Town and Country Planning Act is what's also known as an amenity issue, amenity notice, and we issue it where a property, or a private property, has an extraordinary amount of amenity issues. So it could be the accumulation of a lot of waste. It could be the condition of the property itself, if it's in a particularly poor condition, and the purpose of the notice is to remedy that amenity issue. I would stress that it's not something we would serve if somebody forgets to mow their lawn for a couple of weeks. But if somebody was storing scrap vehicles or a lot of scrap, a lot of rubbish within the garden area, it's something that we could certainly consider doing. And we have served in 215 notices with mixed results in terms of how we eventually deal with the issue. But essentially, it's untidy land. It just refers to something that's outside the norm of what you'd expect in a residential area or in a commercial area. And I believe in this particular case that there is considerable amount of materials within this particular site, and that was sufficient for us to trigger a serving a notice. But as with anything in planning, it is appealable, and hence we have this particular appeal. But perhaps we can bring a future session to members, which will give you some examples of what we would constitute as untidy land. But I don't think that the title itself does it great justice. It has to be very sort of a public amenity issue to allow us to take action.
You happy with that, Councillor Williams?
Yes, I've actually got a couple of complaints, and that was my ulterior motive for asking it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I can't see anybody else wanting to ask any questions on appeals, so we'll move to item 10. Phil is going to give you an update on the item 10. Phil?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to update members of the Development Control Committee on a recent appeal against non-determination for a development on land to the rear of Wineskill Avenue in Bridgend. Application P21301 was submitted to the authority back in December 2020, but validated some time after, following the submission of environmental impact assessment and the associated statements and documentation. Following an extended period of consultation, the council provided the applicant's agent with a review of all the key issues and the key considerations, and also set out that fundamentally the application was at odds with the council's policies, in that the site is not allocated for housing. In fact, it's allocated for green space. And the applicant sought to engage, however, with us to resolve a number of technical issues regarding biodiversity, trees, drainage, The list was exceptionally long. And we did go through a lengthy process, which actually involved the submission of a revised environmental statement, and we had then had to undertake a fairly comprehensive reconsultation with consultees and with residents. That process of engagement with the developers continued as they sought to address outstanding highway issues, and unfortunately, as those negotiations took place, they decided no longer were they doing that, but they would appeal against non-determination. It is something applicants are able to do, and if I'm being open with you, it has been their modus operandi on this site for 20 years. If they don't think they're getting the answers they want, they will take the decision out of the authority's control. Unfortunately, the situation with PEDU at the time was when the appeal was made, they had such a backlog of appeals that it was sitting with them for almost 12 months before we were eventually told that we had to make our submissions as you do as part of the appeal process. Normally, we have something called a dual jurisdiction process where we get a 4-week period after the appeal against non-determination in which to make our determination of the application. PEDU informed us that we had not got that, which was a frustration to us. But nonetheless, we did then, as officers, prepare a report. It was an application that we had always intended to refuse planning permission for. As you know, most refusals are issued under delegated powers, so I, with others, prepared the report, and that report has formed the basis of our case at appeal. And in the report, members, you will see a list of the, how many are there? 5 reasons that we have put to the inspector why planning permission should be refused, or the appeal should be dismissed rather. One of them is the fundamental concern about the conflict with the site's allocation, the development plan, and there were a number of other significant issues regarding the design, the layout, green infrastructure, and there was finally an issue regarding off-site highway works and car parking, and indeed they hadn't satisfied us despite those negotiations regarding drainage. It's purely for you to note, members, because the appeal process is well underway. In fact, I attended the appeal site inspection last week and met the inspector who will eventually write the decision, and she took a comprehensive review of the site, and I was comforted that she was fully aware of the issues that we had presented in terms of our case, and we now await a decision, and no doubt we will bring that decision to you in the same manner as we are bringing this report to you today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that report. On page 104, you can see on the bottom of the page, you can see the officer's recommendation to note. Can somebody formally move we noted in second, please? Thank you, Tony. Tony Beddoes has moved it. Can somebody second it, please?
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. All in favour? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Okay, item number 11, training log. As you can see today, we've got green infrastructure statement and chapter 6 of planning policy Wales. That is immediately after this meeting at 12 till 1, because we didn't come in yesterday as normal. Okay, so we're going to run through that today for an hour or quicker if we can get it done quicker. Then we got Glamorgan Gwent Archaeology Trust on the 15th of May, Conservation and Design 26th of June, PEDO briefing for members on the 24th. Then we got Rights of Way, Tree Policy and Wellbeing and Future Generations Act Commissioner. We might change that around for the benefit of members. We might, I spoke with Jonathan this morning, we might pull the Rights of Way and Bridleway infrastructure forward for the new LDP, which is coming on board very shortly, and it would be just good for members to know what an extinction is, diversion, different things which the Highways Act allows the rights of way to do. So it's a good briefing for members, so they know exactly why footpaths are going to be moved. Can somebody just note that, please?
Noted.
Clark has got a hand up.
All right, Councillor Clark.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering why conservation and design keep moving down the list. I think it's been on this list nearly a 12-month now, and it keeps moving down the list.
Yeah.
And if you're talking, Chair, of bringing something from the bottom up to the top, then it's going to move further down the list.
Yeah, you're quite right, Councillor Clark. Jonathan's going to come in and answer that question now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. But, most of our training sessions are internal, so it relies on officers giving up their time to provide the training session. And in conservation design, we have 2 officers that are covering that particular subject. It's a very important subject, and it's something that's key to the work of the planning service, local planning authority, and you as a committee. Unfortunately, we've had to delay the sessions because of huge workloads. Also, one of the officers was on jury duty for a period of time. That cancelled another session. We've got a lot of projects which requires a design and conservation input, and the Grand Pavilion project in Porthcawl has taken up one officer more or less full time. Yeah. So it's mainly down to resources, but we're trying our best where we can internally to provide these training sessions. Unfortunately, we do have to delay them occasionally. With Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust, it's an outside organisation. Now, we contribute to the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust, and they provide us with a valuable service in terms of archaeological resource. And part of their remit is to provide training for ourselves as a planning committee and as officers. Again, we have to book these sessions well in advance to coincide with the times of trying to bring an outside speaker in. So sometimes, if the only date that is available, we have to go with that, and then something else may have to fall out as a result. But we are trying our best to bring these people to our event. So, some people, like the Wellbeing of Future Generations Commissioner, it's nearly impossible to get them in fact, we've had another Wellbeing of Future Generations Act Commissioner since we put this on the agenda, and it's very difficult to sort of pin them down with the huge remit that these individuals have. So yeah, we're very healthy in our training record, but we do struggle when we are trying to use our own internal resources, because we're at a point where officers are unable to afford the time, unfortunately. I hope that explains some of the reasoning behind it. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll just hang on a second.
On the turbines.
Oh, we've got the distance from the turbines to the nearest house. Phil?
You just walked it.
He just walked it, yeah.
Councillor Clark, as I said, apologies for not being able to answer your question earlier about the distances. I've managed to go back into the original DNS submission and the noise assessment that was submitted then, and there's a table in there that lists the nearest properties, and I think I'm right in saying this. 14 Puthgarn Terrace, which I think is at the top of Blaengarrow, is 1.163 kilometres from the nearest turbine to it, if that makes sense. So all the other properties that were assessed in the noise report are further away. So apologies I wasn't able to give that to you previously, but hopefully you've got an idea. I think I did say a kilometre, didn't I? So, yeah. But it is a bit more than a kilometre to the nearest property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank
you very much. Thank you.
You are, see, Councillor Clark, we try to get it all for you. Right, on the training log and what we're going to do next with the green infrastructure, unfortunately, I just asked officers, can we go straight into it? But we can't. It's tabled for 12 o'clock because all members of the authority can attend these meetings. So unfortunately, look, I haven't got any urgent items.
Item on the LDP.
Yeah. Jonathan just wants to speak on the LDP. Oh, Councillor Pratt first.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I don't like missing training, but I need to get on the road today for work. I was banking on this DCC meeting being quite short. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be at training today, just to let you know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for letting us know. Okay. So I do apologise, but we will be starting from 12 till 1. So if you all want to come back, then I'll come to you now, Councillor Kern. I can see your hand up, and then we'll do it from then. Councillor Kern. You're still on mute. Mike. But you did say you got to go at 12 o'clock, didn't you?
Yeah, just saying I got the same reason as Jonathan. You know, I would have liked to listen to it, but I got to be away at 12 o'clock, unfortunately.
That's fine. Thanks, Mike. Jonathan just wants to come in now and update you on something which is important.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Before I move on to that item, ideally we would have liked to have gone straight into the training session, but unfortunately we have to, as our sessions are open to all members, we put a separate appointment in the calendars, and it could have been the case that this meeting would have gone on a lot longer than it actually did if there was more discussion and debate on items. So we try to predict what is a realistic time scale. So even with a short agenda, we can sometimes overrun, but we try our best to sort of try and manage that time issue if we can. The item it's not a report for noting. We haven't brought it before you as a report, but it's just for members' information. You may have noticed that a session has popped into your calendars for March the 6th, and it's a full all members, full council briefing session online about the new replacement local development plan. All we're waiting on now is a letter from the Welsh ministers to say that they're okay with it formally, and then we will bring it to council for adoption. But before we bring it to council, we'd like to give members an opportunity to ask questions, to raise any issues that they may have before it comes forward for discussion at that council meeting in March. So there's a session has been set up for the 6th of March, and that will be online, and officers will go through the process, and if members have got any issues, they can either raise them there or contact us afterwards. But this is a huge achievement for the authority. There's a lot of work's gone into this plan. We're the first authority in Wales to have second generation LDP post lockdown, and we've never not had a development plan in force, an up-to-date development plan in force for our area ever. So we are continuing that record. So it's testament to the work that some of the officers have put into that. So it's an important document. It's important for the work as a planning committee, and I would urge all members, if they possibly can, to attend that briefing session on the 6th of March. And the good news is that the inspector said the plan is sound. There are no issues with it. The strategy is sound. So it's good news for us as an authority. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good news indeed. As I said, number 12, I haven't got no urgent items that have been brought to my attention. Councillor Griffiths, you have one?
Thank you. Yes, could you tell one? That meeting is not in the calendar as yet. And can you tell me what time it is? Because I've already got 3 different things going on at the moment on March the 6th. So what was the timing, please?
Yeah, I'm checking the calendar appointment now. Rachel, I did put it in for the 6th of March at 10 a.m. I'm looking at the scheduling assistant. Yeah, it's all councillors have been included in that, so I'm not sure why it's not in your calendar.
Yep.
No, it's not in yours. Has anybody else got it in their calendars?
Yeah, I
I
have
think
to.
that was
I have,
received
yeah.
recently. Yeah.
I think it just added this morning, I think, maybe, yeah.
Okay. Heather, do you want to check that out then?
Oh, no, it's not in there. I'm on a site meeting up at the Strand, actually. Oh, hang on. It's just come through.
By magic.
By magic.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. We'll check it out this end to make sure that everybody's got it in their calendar. And then we can make sure we're all attending. Anyway, look, I haven't had any items, so I'm going to formally close this meeting now, and I'll see everybody for 12 o'clock prompt for the training schedule. Thank you very much.
Thank you.